You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, why don't you go ahead and introduce today's guest?
Hi, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm happy to introduce Dr. Stephanie Morley. We're going to talk about innovation in the field of diagnostics. Stephanie is a president and COO at Zomedica. It's a diagnostics organization that has some innovative way of bringing the products from human market to veterinary medicine, and we're going to talk about that. She's previously an associate director of business development at the University of Michigan's Medical School Office of Research. She holds a degree as a DVM with honors from Michigan State University. She also has a degree in hospitality and has a family with 5 kids. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I was trying to fully get immersed into what you do, and it became so confusing that we decided, let's just tell our listeners because it's fascinating, but I don't think that I can capture the entire model. So from what I understood, you are finding the technologies that are under development in the human space that are related to diagnostics, and then you're finding the opportunities in the veterinary space where you can implement them before they're implemented in human model. Is that correct?
That's correct. You made it sound simple.
That's all I got. So if you can explain us, how does that work? How do you find these companies, and what inspired you to actually do this?
And just wait, I got to get a dig in. Occasionally he does smart things like this, so it's good. And at the same time, while you're answering that, how have you blended your hospitality and DVM degree to find yourself where you're at today? So just to make it hard to get started, 3 questions to get started.
Sure. So it does actually sound a little confusing sometimes when you try to talk about Zomedica and what it is we're doing and how we got here. If you go back to the beginning, a lot of people ask about my background in hospitality business and how I ever ended up in veterinary medicine. And there's really no romantic answer to that other than I wasn't very excited about what job opportunities I had. I'm a downhill skier. I was really interested in being in the ski industry. And when I wasn't finding anything that it got me excited, I thought, well, being a veterinarian could be cool. So I literally went back to school, got my prereqs done, and went into veterinary medicine. But what I found in veterinary medicine was that what I loved about hospitality was managing the experience and really providing customer service to my customers. It's a service-based industry where you don't have a widget to sell. You have to help someone find value in their experience. And I feel like small animal practice particularly is the same. We are a cash-based business. There's a lot of bedside manner that comes to maintaining and attracting customers. And ultimately, you're a reluctant salesperson where you're trying to sell your expertise and your recommendations to an owner who ultimately is going to make the determination on the economics associated with the pet who is your patient. So there was a lot of actual similarity in the two. I just didn't realize that until I got into vet school. When I was in vet school, I was really interested in the business side of veterinary medicine, and primarily I just genuinely have a love for business. I love the concept of creating value for someone and they find worth in that and pay you for that worth, and you continue to find value and they continue to find the worth. It just is a really simple but fantastic concept to me, and it's what makes the world go round. So I practiced veterinary medicine in Albuquerque and in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and then I experienced a significant amount of burnout, and for a whole lot of reasons that a lot of people leave veterinary medicine. I left practice and went into lab animal medicine. And again, never expected to be a lab animal vet, but I got into management in lab animal medicine very quickly because of my business interest. And I ended up being responsible for a significant number of animals and people and revenue, and enjoyed everything I learned there, but I missed the customer service aspect. And so I ended up in business development at University of Michigan Medical School in a program called Fast Forward Medical Innovation. And Fast Forward at Medical Innovation was really a program set up to connect researchers in the medical school, so MD, PhD researchers who had products that had commercial value, and really educating the 3,000 plus medical faculty at University of Michigan on what that commercialization process looks like. And then I was helping to identify industry partners for funding and or co-development to take those concepts from bench to bedside. And so in my time at University of Michigan, I saw a lot of technologies, pharmaceutical, device, IT, digital health solutions, where the focus was on human medicine, where I saw complete application in veterinary medicine. And Michigan is known as kind of a flyover state for innovation. Everything happens on the coast and everyone flies over the state of Michigan. And doing business development, I had to find reasons to encourage people to stop in the Detroit area and say, there's probably some good tech here. University of Michigan is one of the top NIH-funded research facilities in the country, and so there's a lot of really fantastic innovation going on around here. So when my co-founder got a hold of me through various, neighbors, cousins, husbands kind of concept, we didn't know each other, but he had an innovation of his own to use the Canadian capital markets to take a company public, to get access to public capital, pre-revenue. And so he knew he wanted to start an animal health company, but he wasn't a veterinarian, and he found me. And so together he focused on the money side and I focused on the pipeline. So we did go public on the Toronto Stock Exchange in 2015. We incorporated in 2015, went public 2015. And then 2 years later, we cross-listed on the New York Stock Exchange American. And that in and of itself was an innovation. But what I was challenged to do is to say, what products would veterinarians use and what's going to add value? And a lot of this was organic, but what I learned from a lot of the tech companies that I worked with at University of Michigan and a lot of the people that were more on the digital health side, technology companies, and you two would both know this very well, are very, very good at adapting to customer needs. You have to be. And a lot of that adapting comes from regular interaction with potential customers. You'll beta test something. You'll give it to 10 friends and get feedback, and then you'll iterate, and then you'll give it to 10 more friends and beta test again, et cetera. It's hard to do in the life sciences because it's a very costly road. And it's also hard to put things out there where you couldn't potentially risk your intellectual property. And so what we did was we started with voice of one vet, being me, saying, yep, I'd use that, reach out to my classmates, that kind of thing, and say, yep, that would make sense. But then we also developed something called the Veterinary Advisory Committee, whereby we have 10 veterinary professionals that are technicians, veterinarians, practice managers from across the country who receive a weekly survey from us. So we ask them everything from helping us decide on our marketing approaches to the form factor of our devices to which assays we're going to develop. And then we also developed a program called Voice of the Vet, which was really this concept that as a veterinarian, I know we are hard to sell to. We don't trust big corporations very easily. We don't trust salespeople very easily. And we're very slow to change. We make decisions based on what our mentors have taught us, what our friends are doing. And so I wanted to create a platform where people would recognize our brand so that they would trust us when we had something come to market. And I wanted to bring those people into the product development process and say, you are our customer, so come help us do this. So we created the Voice of the Vet program in 2016, I think it was, and we're over 3,000 members strong. So we have a voice of customer base of potential users for when we launch our first product and when we're ready to iterate. Once we get out there and do our beta, we'll be in our first official beta test this year. We'll have people who are ready to be part of that feedback. So that's kind of how we've approached how do we find technologies and how do we make sure that they're really fitting an unmet need and that they're being developed with the actual end user in mind. and not just from one veterinarian's perspective, which I think is fairly innovative and a lot more about making the veterinarian the customer and not the pet or the pet owner.
Wow. So I think that just where I would start is probably the last time I've seen someone wanting to go from downhill skiing to improve customer experience is looking for a job at Four Seasons. That's probably the best scenario. Not go
That's
full
true.
circle through the medical education and then creating an IPO company in Toronto to then move to stock exchange in New York and then loop it back into veterinary medicine. So that's not the first correlation between hospitality and DVM that we expected to hear.
Yeah,
Wow.
Thanks for making it really a simple story. That was super easy to follow, but unbelievably complex.
Yeah. Wow. No, it's super interesting. So are there products that, I don't know, are you under the non-disclosure on any of these things? Or is there something that comes to market that we're all going to hear about? That is going to be a product that the one that you said in beta and coming out that we can talk about?
Yep. So we have three diagnostic platforms that we have licensed from companies focused on the human market. Two of them are point of care technologies and one is a reference lab technology. Two out of the three are actually Michigan-based companies. So when I talked about the flyover state, we took advantage of the connections we had here and found technologies that were perfect for what it is we were building, and fortunately just made a really good made in Michigan story. So our first product market is actually the latest product we've licensed. It's a product we're calling True Forma, and it's a point of care technology that we've licensed from a company called Corvo Biotechnologies. Their parent company is a large company that creates radio frequency technology for communications industry. And what they identified was that they have this little sensor called a bulk acoustic wave sensor that they use for iPhones and other communication devices. They identified that it could be used as a biosensor. And so they developed a point of care technology whereby instead of using optical detection, where typically, let's say you have an antigen antibody interaction and there's a fluorescence associated with that, and that camera is going to pick up whatever that light is to say, is something present or not. There's limits to optical detection when you're talking about very, very small quantities of analytes that you're trying to detect. What the bulk acoustic wave sensor does is it's moving at a known frequency, and when there is a change in mass based on that antigen antibody reaction, it detects that change in frequency, and therefore it is significantly more sensitive than an optical detection. And so being that this is a point of care device, now what you're able to do is detect analytes that are normally requiring a reference lab for detection because of the level of sensitivity needed. You can now do at point of care. So the first assays we're developing on this platform are focused on thyroid and adrenal disorders. So we are developing TSH, including feline TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, T4 and free T4. And then for endocrine, we're developing a cortisol as well as an endogenous ACTH assay. So really what that allows, the reason we focused on thyroid and adrenal, is that allows for actual diagnosis of thyroid and adrenal disorders in one visit versus requiring samples being sent to the reference lab and having to wait on answers.
It's really interesting, and it's obviously a very complex field. The one question that comes to mind for me is, how do the large diagnostic companies look at an organization like yours? It seems like your approach to customer feedback and launching products is more in line with a startup. And I think in a lot of cases, those larger organizations are much different. So what's the view? What's the leg up that you have on the competition in these regards?
Any startup, any small company, one of the things that they have that larger companies doesn't have is the ability to be nimble and react quickly. So, I think our ability to reach out to customers and really truly bring the voice of customer that much closer to the product development process is just because we're small. We're 22 people strong. As co-founder and president and COO, I'm regularly on social media and interacting with veterinarians, and many of them are friends and colleagues. So that really allows us to make decisions quickly and pivot. As far as the competition goes, there are very few small startup diagnostic companies in animal health with a full pipeline of products. But you'll notice that in our pipeline, we don't have chemistry and we don't have hematology. We're not trying to be another large diagnostic company. We're trying to fill holes and gaps that we see. Nobody has an endogenous ACTH assay, particularly at the point of care. No one has a feline TSH assay that's validated for cat in reference lab or point of care. So we're really complementary to those diagnostic services that have chemistry and hematology at point of care. And as well as those that have reference labs, we have the potential to bring some of that additional work for other new biomarkers, et cetera. So we have been very careful not to come across as major competition, but instead, how can we use our ability to be nimble and our ability to be very innovative and to work with these diagnostic companies on the human side in a way that'll fill some gaps that they aren't currently able to fill. I often call it a David and Goliath, right? So we're definitely the David in a world of Goliath right now. We just have to be smart in how we make sure we're filling user needs without creating any undue competition that could keep that from getting to the customer.
So if I understand correctly your end product, are you creating the product that could be used even at the hospital level, or you are creating the product that these large companies can use and become your customer? Who's your end customer on these products?
So our end customer is the practicing veterinarian.
Okay, so you are in a way competing with the larger Antex and IDEXs of this world if they don't see you as a complementary, which a lot of the times as startups, when we come up with a very niche product, we say, no, we're not competing with you. And I've been in this field several times. And then they just don't see the big picture for a very long time until they realize that you're actually doing something really focused. They always see it as a black and white, you're a competitor or not. And that's probably the space where you're at right now.
Maybe, but our goal is we're 100% focused on creating value to the veterinarian. And so, like I said, chemistry, hematology, there's plenty of companies doing that, and they're doing it very, very well. We're just focusing on tests at the point of care that we believe veterinarians will find utility and value in our development. The opportunity for us to add value where others aren't currently adding it could definitely be seen as competitive. But again, if we stay focused on our end user, then I think we're going to end up complementing anyone in the diagnostic sector, because tests lead to more tests. And the whole reason I actually wanted to go into diagnostics and pivot into diagnostics was because when I was in practice, it wasn't always about getting the best treatment for a pet. It was about getting the best answer for the owner. When you're trying to convince an owner that they need to take your recommendation for treatment or additional diagnostics for their pet, the more that you're able to give them the right answers, the more they trust you further down the road. And particularly people who are involved in medicine, it's not always easy to get the right answer right off the bat. And so if we can get better answers faster, that helps veterinarians to do additional tests. It also helps them to get additional treatment. And for their business health, it helps them retain those customers and develop that trust that's necessary to ensure that that pet's going to stay a patient of yours for its full lifetime.
It's really interesting. So the other question that comes to my mind, Stephanie, just the whole innovation, like kind of going public or being listed on the stock exchange and then experiencing quite a bit of rapid growth. What's that journey been like for you as a veterinarian that had a keen interest in business? It seems like you've had a hell of an interesting ride over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you can't see the gray hairs, but there's a couple of them up there. It's been a really interesting ride. I think sometimes particularly as an entrepreneur, it's good to not see the end first. Not that we're at the end, but if you knew what you were getting into, then you may not do it. It's funny, Ivan, you said something earlier about my career and the coming full circle. Our tagline is actually come full circle. And there were a bunch of reasons for that from a branding perspective, but it resonated with me significantly because when I look back on my career and all the nuanced, experiences that I had and the ability to have opportunities to see so many different parts of business and different types of businesses, et cetera, and stages of development of technology, it kind of all went to this universal moment for me where I was like, oh, that's why I learned all this stuff. And it really allowed me to kind of pivot my perspective of even career journey as just kind of let go and learn. And I've had to use that mentality a lot through this process, is just say, there's obviously something I'm supposed to be learning from this moment, because otherwise I'd get too caught up in the stress and I'd lose sight of the end game. And so for me, the journey has been one of the biggest things that I've had to really be disciplined about is never forget what your goal is. And my goal above anything else is to get these products to the market. I want my friends to use these products. I want these products in the market when my dog gets sick. I want veterinary students who are graduating in the next decade to change how they practice because of something we brought to market. I want the health of their patients to be positively impacted based on what we've done here at Zomedica. Staying focused on that allows me to kind of ride the waves that come with entrepreneurship of one day can be super, super high and the next day is super, super low. But I'm very, very proud to have the opportunity to, lead the charge on that and to be able to have a team of people who all believe in that same mission and just kind of trust that it's all happening for a reason.
That's awesome.
You said a couple of things there that made me feel the same way. Being through the company from end to end and exit, at the end of it, a lot of people would say, oh, and then you sold the company and that's, a success. And it's yes, for the most part, yes. But then what was missing after is the feeling of that journey. And that's what you're describing, that the way you get there and the line that to everybody outside is a straight line from the hockey stick from bottom up, which was for you down, really down, up a little bit, again down, further down than it was, and then up. And then if you connect all the dots, it is up. But all of that experience is really what entrepreneurs get infected with. They basically can't stay away from that journey. And I think that is what's phenomenal, and that's what I heard you say. It's fascinating and definitely an interesting way you got here. I hate to say, guys, but I think that we're out of time, and
We are.
but it's quite a story. I really appreciate you coming onto our show. We have 2 questions that we're asking. So Stephanie, if you would recommend some resource, TED Talk, a book, something that inspired you recently that you would recommend to the listeners, that would be great to share.
Yeah, so I have 2. One, I think probably a lot of people say is the Simon Sinek, the Start With Why. So it goes back to what's my why, and that's what keeps me going every day. But the other, the TED Talk, I can't remember, it's probably about 10 years ago I first saw it, but it was the lone man dancing on the hill. I don't remember the exact name of it, but if you look it up, it basically talks about it's not necessarily the person who leads the charge that really is the true innovator. It's the person who's not afraid to follow that person. It shows that it's the power of the first follower that really leads to major change and adoption. And I feel like what we're trying to do, it's great if me and all the people at Zomedica are leading this charge, but we really need the whole industry to start following and be excited about what we're doing.
Wow. And the second question we asked, who else do you think would be a good guest on our show that we could invite on your behalf and with your reference?
I could give you many that you've already talked to, but one of my most favorite people in the world, but also in veterinary medicine, that I don't think you've talked to is Dr. Mia Carey. And many people know Mia But what she has done, she has a very similar trajectory of just following passion and excitement and what got her going in her career. But what she has done to bring excitement and genuine love and positivity to veterinary medicine is just beautiful. And she's a good person to just feel good.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.